In Nash Falls, the latest thriller by David Baldacci, Walter Nash is recruited by the FBI to help bring down a global crime network, and his happy, successful life is turned upside down. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and this is Some Books Considered. David Baldacci is the #1 best-selling author with more than 200 million copies sold worldwide. His books have also been adapted for television and movies, and he's also the co-founder, along with his wife, of the Wish You Well Foundation, which we'll learn more about later. He joins us to talk about his novel, Nash Falls. David, welcome to Some Books Considered.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Thank you.
Well, good to talk with you again. And here we have another new novel. What can you tell us about the inspiration for this one?
So, the longer you write books, and I've written a lot of them, the challenge really is to get yourself out of your comfort zone and try something you haven't done before. And I'd never written a character like Walter Nash. He's, not in the military. He's not a detective. He doesn't have a special set of skills. He's a businessman, very successful. He has a nice life. His only, issues, he was estranged from his father, unhappy relationship there. But I wanted to take a guy and completely out of his element and force him to become someone totally opposite of what he was. In order to survive. I wanted to give a guy a choice, and no matter which choice he made, it was going to mean the end of him, and to see what that would do to him. And that was my challenge in this novel. And I tell you, I had a blast writing it. I had sometimes difficult times writing it because I really wasn't sure what made this guy tick yet. But as I worked through the story, I think I was able to get a really good handle on Nash.
Well, there are a lot of themes in this novel, it appears to me. One of them is daddy issues. Nash has father issues, and Rhett, a character in the book, has father issues, and they both are formative figures in their lives, where Nash in particular, like you said, has this estranged relationship with his father because of a lot of really bad things that kind of went on. But at the same time, those experiences also kind of formed him in a way that allows him to deal with the challenges he's going through.
It really is. I try to impress upon the reader in the story that even though the two men were estranged, they were a lot alike, and they both had motors that just wouldn't quit. And that served Nash well during the course of the book. Rhett was a little bit different. He had been given, unlike Nash, he'd been given everything in life. Nash had to work for what he had. But just being given something, I think, is very destructive. You don't really learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. You don't really build confidence in yourself. You just think you're there because your father allows you to be there. And that was a chip that, Rhett Temple has carried on his shoulder throughout the novel. And what I tried to do with him, he's a jerk and you've seen him come on the page, but people have told me that when he comes on the page, you can't take your eyes off him because you don't know what he's going to do. But I also tried, little bits and pieces and scenes and beats along the way to try to instill some humanity in the guy so that he's not just a caricature. He's a man that seems to have everything in life, and actually he has nothing.
So we talked a little bit about these two characters, but let's back up a little bit and talk about the plot itself. And what happens to Nash? What turns his life upside down?
So Walter Nash goes to his father's funeral. He gets trashed in a eulogy by his father's old friend, Shock. He goes home. It's very late at night. He's the only one awake. And an FBI agent, Morris, appears and tells Walter Nash that his company that he works for, Cybernetic, is actually part of a criminal organization, and they want Nash to spy on it to help bring it down. In other words, he has to give up his entire life and the life of his family, and become, spy, and ultimately probably going into witness protection. This is on a day that he's already been devastated by what happened with his father and the funeral, and I think just pushes him to the edge. And that really starts the novel. And that's the choice he's given. If you don't do this, you're going to go down. If you do this, you're going to have to disappear.
So an impossible choice for him. And things get more and more complicated from there. Don't want to give spoilers, but this guy, everything that could go wrong for him does.
He has a very formidable protagonist, Victoria Steers, who runs this criminal organization, and you will see a great deal more of her in the sequel to Nash Falls that comes out in April of next year. She is cagey and ruthless and quite intelligent. She has her own demons, her own problems that she's dealing with as well on the family side. And it's a chess match. And every move he makes, she makes a counter move. and they are equally matched. But Nash doesn't have the resources that she has, so really he has to count on one person only, and that's himself, with a little bit of support from his father's old friend Shock. Without Shock's support, Nash wouldn't have a chance.
And that's another thing I saw in this book, that there are people, you have an initial impression of them. It turns out that that's wrong. Shock, you thought, was just a terrible person, but turns out to be an ally. And what he thought was a fairly idyllic family life for Nash turns out to not be so.
This is a book of you can't trust first impressions. And the old cliche, don't judge a book by its cover, because in real life, if you look around at people, they seem to have everything. Listen to a lot of Dateline podcasts, and the happiest families in the world turn out to be full of murderers and thieves and terrible people. So the surface gets very deceiving. And these days, unfortunately, most people don't have time or inclination to dig underneath the surface until something catastrophic happens. But everyone has secrets. And no matter how good someone's life seems to be, nobody's life is perfect, not even close.
And the other thing I think that sort of Walter and Rhett have in common, because they're both their lives are basically destroyed by this woman who's in charge of this criminal network. So Rhett feels like he has no choice but to do what he has to do for self-preservation. And of course, Walter has to make some major changes in his life because of her threats as well.
Yeah, they are both trapped by her, and they're both trying to fight their way out of it, but in very different ways and with very different motivations. Rhett is very much into survivalist mode for himself, with tinges, of being a good person here and there. Nash wants to avenge. He wants to survive. He wants to bring the people down who destroyed his life and his family's life. Obviously, his motivations are good and pure. But at the same time, and as we get into the second novel as well, he becomes terribly conflicted about all of this, because it gets even more complicated in the second novel. I thought this was going to be only one novel with Walter Nash. By the time I was like 350 pages in, I was like, I have a whole other book to write. So I can't finish it in one book unless I make this book a doorstopper, which I didn't want to. And that's why I included the first couple of chapters of Hope Rises, which is the sequel, in the back of the hardcover for Nash Falls, so people can get an idea of where this is going. But it's one of the most challenging, complicated books that I've ever written. And it's taken, my characters to places I'm not sure I've taken my characters to before.
And unlike a lot of your other books that could be taken as standalone, this one really leaves people wanting that second novel to find out what's happening.
Yeah, and I have to say that I try to be very fair about my novels. Nash Falls, I think, is a wonderful book, and I put a lot into it. Hope Rises is a whole nother level. And it's just better in a lot of ways, because it delivers, of the 1-2 punch, it delivers a knockout to everyone in this next one. And if you didn't think, things were what they seem to be in Nash Falls, wait till you read Hope Rises, because that's where the payoff comes across the spectrum.
As you mentioned, this is a different type of novel, a different type of character that you haven't written before. And I've read a lot of your novels. I would agree. I think as far as the transformation that a character has to go through, this is one of the most extreme. I mean, all of your characters evolve over time and have to adjust, but Walter Nash, man, he has to go to some extreme measures to deal with what's happening in his life.
Yeah, it's to the point where, again, he had to become someone he never wanted to be. And as he says to someone in the second novel, do you really think I wanted to become this? It was an enforced transformation, which is sort of new for me too. And I just wanted to see, people have to change course in their lives in real life all the time. They have to make different decisions, take up new careers, move to new places, get new relationships, whatever. I wanted to take it to the nth degree. I wanted to take this guy, not push him to the wall. I wanted to push him through the wall and see what he had left in the tank, and whether he could actually pick himself back up and keep moving forward. That's a question that is throughout a lot of my books, because I find it endlessly fascinating, because it's all about human beings. What are they capable of? One of the taglines that came up with this book is, when you've lost everything, you're capable of anything. And I think that's very true, not just in novels, but in real life.
Now, a lot of this novel, in terms of what's going on nefariously, is set in the world of finance and money laundering, etc. What kind of research did you have to do to make sure that all rang true?
Yeah, when I was practicing law, I did a lot of work in finance as well, both some corporate and a lot of litigation. So I had a pretty good education on that. But I have a lot of friends in the financial world, and I just sat down and became a journalist and interviewed them. I read lots of articles about how to do it and how not to do it. What are the most, effective ways to do it? What do people see out there? I talk to agents and law enforcement that have to deal with this on a daily basis. It's incredibly complicated, and I have to tell you that the people that the bad guys have on their side are probably better than the ones we have on our side. We're trying to catch them. Why? Because they're paid a lot more money. you know, and the incentive is if you mess up on the good side, you might get demoted or not get an next promotion. If you're a money guy trying to hide, the trail from the good guys on the bad side, if you mess up, you're dead. So you're probably going to try a little harder.
Yeah, I would think so. Now, in the next book, you say it's coming out in April of next year?
Yes. I didn't want it to be a full year. So I wrote both of the books fairly quickly, and I would make clear with my publishers, this is not going to be November of 2026. It's going to be April of 2026. And I also told them we needed to have the first couple of chapters in the hardcover, which I don't think anybody's ever done before. You usually get chapters like that in a trade or a mass market. But I said, put the first two chapters in the back of the hardcover. So when they finish it, they can keep reading and start Hope Rises. And then a few months from now, they'll be able to pick that book up.
Well, while we wait for that book, do you have other things in the works?
Yeah, I'm working on the next Travis Divine. That'll be coming out in the fall of 2026. In the spring of 2027, I have another Aloysius Archer, my gumshoe detective. It'll be the fourth novel that he's in. It'll be out in the spring of 2027. And I think you'll probably see Amos Decker, Memory Man, be coming back. And I can't say that, Walter Nash won't be coming back. He's a fascinating character that I'm very much enamored with right now.
Well, before I let you go, tell us about the Wish You Well Foundation and the work you do through it.
So my wife and I funded it over 20 years ago. We fund literacy organizations and initiatives across the country. We just did two fundraisers in North Carolina, one in Asheville, which is devastated by the hurricane, and one in the Highlands there, where we raised a bunch of money for their literacy centers there. It's the one skill you need in order to realize your potential as a human being, both socially and economically. Another thing my wife and I just funded, we working with my alma mater, Virginia Commonwealth University and the Library of Virginia, we gave them a lot of money to combine to this program that's going to grow across the state of Virginia, where we're calling it an Institute for Civil Discourse and Collaboration. We're working at the citizenry level, residents of Virginia, trying to bring them together to get through this polarization, tribalization, getting people to talk to each other through thousands of different platforms and venues and programs and symposiums to get people focused on politics, re-energize them, their duties they have as citizens to understand what's going on, not wait until the last minute to decide, what the issues are, who they're going to vote for, to become engaged like we used to be. And we think this could be a turning point and maybe a model for other states as well to use.
Well, this current thriller is Nash Falls. It's part one of a two-book series that will wrap up in April of next year, so we'll look forward to that. David, thank you very much for talking with me today.
Always enjoy it. Thank you for having me.
If you'd like to purchase Nash Falls, I've placed a link for you in the description below. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. Meanwhile, here are two more books you might find interesting. I'm Dan Skinner. Thank you for watching this edition of Some Books Considered.